if, well, Deku was Ant-Man Part 1. Now, this is a what if I wanted to do for a short amount of time, probably a couple months. But now I got the story right, and this is going to be probably my 5th or maybe my 6th what if based off Deku if he was related or was a Marvel character. Now, after this what if, I am going to be uploading my stop motion, and it might come out at like 9 something or 8:40 because I started recording this at, well, right now it's 8:38 p.m. So you might see the stop motion tomorrow morning or tonight, but it'd be more, categorized or category wise, or more or less the best time to post post a video would probably be 6 a.m. or like 6 p.m. later in the afternoon. Maybe like doing, tomorrow Saturday. I might upload it tomorrow Saturday or tonight. But let's just get into the video. Now, I start our story off with Izuku Midoriya and his story and his journey and pretty much what makes him Ant-Man in this universe. Now, we start our story off with Izuku Midoriya. Now, we continue. We start our story, with Deku's birth. As Deku would be born in this canon as a quirk user, but his quirk would be kind of useless, well, on its own at least. Now, Deku's heritage or life would be similar the same, but this universe's, hero culture will be tweaked a little bit. Now, Deku's grandfather, or Deku's father, would have been tweaked just a tad bit. Now, let's just dive right into the family part of the story. Now, Deku's grandfather would have been our version, or this universe's version of Hank McCoy, or Hank Pym. Hank Pym, not Hank McCoy, that's Beast, but Hank Pym. Now, Hank Pym would have been, well, this universe's Ant-Man. Him basically creating pin particles, doing the beginning of quirk, evolution, or doing the beginning of quirks would become a big thing. Now, it would be hate groups about or against quirk people because, they're different, but eventually those will all die because, everybody and their children would get quirks. So it was basically pointless to be hating because you would eventually be outlived by quirk people. Now, Deku's grandfather, Hank McCoy or Hank Pym, Ant-Man, would have been the very first hero alongside other vigilante pro heroes, doing the beginning of quirks and hero, career, or the hero, business. Deku's grandfather would have been Ant-Man, a part of this universe's Avengers or their first Avengers. Now, this universe would have a Captain America, an Iron Man, and a bunch of other stuff. So the Super Soldier Serum would have actually been the very first quirk because they would have used, technology and also a drug to manifest the quirk gene and amplify it and evolve it quicker than it would take for, evolution to take its course. So what would have happened is, this universe's Super Soldier or Captain America would have had a quirk just modified or sped up to gain or evolve a quirk. So pretty much what they did over the years, as people would start developing quirks, they started to try to restart the Super Soldier Serum. As they started to restart the Super Soldier Serum again and again, as they would have tried to recreate the superhuman speed, agility, and strength without any other mutations on top of that strength, but they would just put it to the end or put it to rest because, people were getting quirks that were way more powerful than just the superhero or the Super Soldier Serum they were making. But them also selling it as a drug, Hydra, in this universe, it would be a Hydra in this universe. Basically, them taking that drug and using it to amplify quirks. It being this universe of, quirk amplifying drugs. The amplifying quirk drug would come from that origin instead of just being a drug, like in the anime. Now, what would happen during this time, Hank McCoy or Hank Pym would have devoted his life into trying to recreate or trying to, evolve, the Hank Pym particles. As he would eventually get married and have a child, that child being this universe's Scott Lang, aka Deku's father. As Deku's father, so Deku's father would have been a pro hero in his life. He would have been a pro hero, and he would have still had a type of fire ability. Now, Deku's father would have fire breathing, but he wouldn't just burn things. When he, breathed fire, as he burned things, they would shrink. They would shrink. They would shrink instead of burning or turning into ash. As they would shrink, as they would be about the same size as an ant or like an action figure, or like 3 inches or 4 inches. Basically, him being able to, shrink anything with his fire breathing, even villains. But the effects of his fire breathing would last about 2 hours. Now, with his abilities being powerful and all, he would also borrow a prototype suit from his father, it being somewhat like the original suit of Scott Lang in the comics, but a little bit less modified. It being more of a prototype. It being more of a weaker suit that didn't even use pin particles. It was just fireproof. So yeah, that was the whole reason for the suit. The suit also enhanced or focused the precise or the pretty much aim of his fire breath, being able to shoot it in torpedo-like ways, or even ricochet it or guide the flames into weird zigzag, kind of like Darkseid's laser beams type of fire breathing. Being able to make his fire breath like literally turn corners. So yeah, been a pro hero. Him been about like maybe the 10th or 11th pro hero. Him being a pretty popular hero in terms of the ladies, but I'm eventually marrying, Inko, same as in canon. Inko also being a pro hero, but retiring after she would have Daku. Now, since they would be pro heroes and semi-popular heroes in terms of, fame and also money, they would be able to pit a plan and they would save some money because they would be popular. They would be, responsible pro heroes, not really spending all their money on pointless things, as they would put it in a bank account and basically live flourishly in, in like a house, mature Japanese house. A modern Japanese house. As the Japanese house would have been modernized, it living near the coast of near the forest area of Japan, right next to UA or near UA Academy. It being mainly more of a modern type Japanese house, it having some, foraging plants in the back, and then inside of the house looking kind of like a penthouse or, smart house type vibe. As Deku would also, grow up in that house. As Deku's father would have still been, a pro hero after Inko would have retired, him still working as a pro hero. But over time, he would eventually, retire. Him doing a couple other jobs other than being a pro hero. Him doing some, 991 call jobs, since he would be, qualified for that, since he would go to law school after Hero Academy, also double, pretty much juggling being a pro hero on top of going to law school after My Hero Academia Academy. So he would be pretty high budget. He would have a lot of pretty much levels of his application. He would get a lot of jobs, and he would sometimes even be over achieved for smaller low budget jobs. Deku's father being somewhat of a genius, but not on the same level as Hank Pym. Now, switch a couple years later, as Deku would be about 10, as Deku would start to show that he was a child prodigy. He was incredibly smart. Deku being, the same level of, knowledge as he would have in canon, but, 14 times that. Him being about the same level of intelligence as, Reed Richards and Hank McCoy, even, his grandfather, Hank Pym, being on the same level of intellect as them, even Tony Stark as well. Even him being at the same level of intelligence as Moon Girl. Moon Girl being basically one of the smartest kids, or one of the smartest people in Marvel Comics to date right now. Well, near the smartest. Her being speculated when she gets older, she's gonna get a lot more smarter. But yeah. So after Deku's father would have still been doing hero jobs and would still be being a hero on side to side, like on certain days. Him still having a side job, but also majority of the time being there for Deku and raising him, not being overseas all the time. As he would be overseas for the teenage part of Deku's life, but be there then and there, jumping back and forth. As Deku would show that he was incredibly smart, and he was way smarter than his peers in school, and pretty much in elementary school, and more of his early years of school. As he would eventually be switched to middle school, him going to more of a private middle school, like where Ida and Todoroki would go to, since his parents would be not super rich, but they would have a lot of money saved up. So they would have put Deku in a very prestigious school, a private school in Japan, the same school where Todoroki and Ida would have gone to. Now, Bakugo would not go to that. He would still be going to the public middle school that he would have gone to in canon, meaning that Deku would have never met Bakugo, but Deku would still be bullied because, for some reason, it would be a bully at his private school. Let's just name this bully maybe Derek. He wouldn't go to UA, but he would be there for the whole entire, license exam later on in the future. Now, Derek, let me just write that on the screen real quick. Derek the bully. Now, pretty much, Derek would have been, the bully of this situation. Him being kind of a black-haired, generic Japanese-looking guy in anime, but him being more of a type of, kind of having like a Tanjiro type face, but with black hair and more blander features. Now, as the bully would have, tormented Deku for, the majority of his life, Deku being very smart, making very big comebacks, and basically going back and forth with this kid. Eventually, when Deku found out he was quirkless, after the age of 10, when he found out he was a prodigy, they would have tried to think that Deku had like an intelligence quirk. But he wouldn't have an intelligence quirk. He would just be a childhood prodigy, not really having a quirk at all. As Deku, over time, would have manifested a quirk. The doctors knowing that he had a double joint, but him not manifesting any type of quirk, so he would have trained his intelligence, seeing that it wasn't a quirk, it was just his intelligence. But when Deku turned about 12, as Deku wouldn't be in middle school just yet, but he would be, pretty much going into that realm. As Deku would have started to manifest his quirk very late, a late bloomer. As Deku, it would be like somewhere near this time, as Deku would be 12, as Deku would have started to manifest his power, or his quirk. As Deku's quirk would have been, his body would produce pin particles in his blood cells, meaning that if Deku's blood touched an object or an item, like a drop, or pretty much, let's say like a water bottle, or like a maybe like a water bottle cap full of his blood would fall into an item, it would shrink down to the size of an ant, or to any size that, those pin particle shurikens they used in the Ant-Man movie would shrink down that object or grow that object. But it being random, so Deku always had to keep his body safe and not bleed too much. As Deku would, pretty much go over life, trying to manifest his quirk, but seeing that it was virtually powerless without any type of help. Since he would have to prick himself, and plus his, effects on objects with his shrinking power or quirk with his blood, it would have been virtually, useless, because it would be always random. It would always be random, and it would never be precise, and also he would have to prick himself and have a certain amount of blood to pit over an object to make it shrink, because if the object was too big, like a car, you would have to use a gallon or 2 gallons of blood to shrink a car, or a truck, or even like a small building. But he would have to use like a lot of his blood for like a building, or like a skyscraper, or anything like a big store, or like a type of building, like kind of like a Walmart, or like a HEB plus. Like he would have to use most of, actually just not most, like all of his blood in his body. They even shrink half of the building. His powers being kind of unpredictable, sometimes. His blood being unpredictable with his quirk. Sometimes his blood wouldn't even shrink objects. It would just make them bigger or just shrink them by a little bit. As Daku over time would have manifested his power, trying to use it in, specific ways, pitting it in guns, or pitting it in little shurikens, him making sure to test his blood, and to see that every time his blood left his body, the pin particles would have changed when it hit, the oxygen. It growing or shrinking objects it would touch on. So he would use a glass he modified with his intelligence to not be affected by pin particles. So he would have dissected his blood, trying to figure out what made his blood shrink and grow certain objects. As he would eventually figure out that he couldn't, grow certain parts of his body, but where his body had the most blood of the area, or most blood in a certain part of his area, he could grow it bigger than human size, if you know what I mean. But we're not gonna get into that. Like, maybe his feet, he could grow his feet, but those powers are basically useless because he would just have really big feet. And after that, he wouldn't have any, superhuman strength or anything. His bones would grow, could run faster, but it would be pretty hard to run super fast with giant feet. That would still be the same durability as your normal feet on bare ground. Him running incredibly fast, basically scratching his feet, even dragging blood on the floor, and maybe even shrinking the concrete on the floor, or just causing big cracks in the ground. So that part of his quirk would never be, explored, but maybe in stress times. But over time, Deku would have found out about his grandfather's, pretty much, instinct, or his grandfather's pretty much input on quirks, and his, pretty much knowledge and his experiments with pin particles. Him finding his father's old suits in a old laboratory. Or his grandfather's old suits at an old laboratory his father is paying for but never really goes to. As Deku would meet his grandfather at a grave, his grandfather being long dead because it would be a pretty long time ago, as Deku would have just walked off. Him finding the laboratory, as he would have paid respect to his grandfather at the grave, as Deku would have looked at his old suits and his old, pretty much projects and notebooks on pin particles, as he would have found out about pin particles, using them to become a, pro hero near the quirk era of vigilantes. As Deku would have looked at his father's work and his experiments and his knowledge and his, blueprints, as he would have put together a pin particle suit himself. As he would have put together a pin particle or an Ant-Man suit himself, it being very reminiscent of his father's suit. It being somewhat exactly like his father's suit. The helmet just being modified and the suit being modified, and the whole thing would have had blood cartridges and would have been able to pit small nanotech or small, very, very advanced parts of tech in his suit, dissecting his blood cells. So it would have been a very high-tech suit. Pretty much a OP suit, to put it simple. Now, as his suit would have been incredibly powerful, not powerful, but incredibly advanced for, a teenage boy or a preteen boy, not even he would be about, let's say, 13 years old, since his birthday would be during the summer of Japan. As Deku would have experimented with the suit, him figuring out that his blood would be able to power the suit the same way pin particles powered the suit that his grandfather wore to shrink his grandfather down, and to make him go bigger as well as Goliath, as Deku's grandfather would have still had, the whole entire personas as the original Hank Pym, as, Yellow Jacket, and, Giant Man and Goliath. I think he was Goliath at one point, or that was another hero, but yeah. So, Deku would have used his suit to pretty much do some training, even some vigilante business. Him stopping robberies as a small version of him not really showing off his suit, or even being seen, for that matter. As Deku would have had the same power set as Scott Lang Ant-Man in the Marvel Comics universe, as he would have had the ability to shrink down and grow at size. And also, pretty much, his cartridges, or the middle parts of his suit, would have been filled with little versions of his blood. Him being able to dissect his blood in the same little Ant-Man shurikens that were used in the movie. Him using blue and red ones to categorize his different blood cells to shrink or grow certain objects, as he would have used his power to do this, as his power would have been just, well, done at that point. After this would have happened, Deku training his body and training the suit, and pretty much him just experimenting with it. Eventually, him figuring out the perfect way to use it. Him using it the same way as Scott Lang would have used it in the Marvel comics, in the, Marvel universe. As he would have had the same gear and tech, just a little bit more advanced. Him using his blood as, well, pin particles. As he would have experimented with the original pin particles as well, being able to modify his blood and to dissect it even easier. As it's simple, his body, his quirk is just to pretty much, well, make pin particles. Now, after this, as Deku would have finished up his suit and would have started to train with his powers, as he would have signed up for the entry exams of UA, as we would get switched a couple years later. As Deku would have been, a little bit picked on a little bit, but him not being picked off too much because he'd be the smartest kid in the school. Now, as he would still be a child prodigy, but most people would dog on him because he would have a useless quirk that was so random and that could barely even work in a real fight. Because over the years, Deku would have seen that he didn't have any real fighting abilities, so he used his knowledge and his, wittiness to sign up for multiple, pretty much big league teachers and karate classes and jiu-jitsu. Him learning about 4 or 5 martial arts to fight and, and combat. He would learn kickboxing, well, normal boxing. He would learn karate, jiu-jitsu, and street fighting, just normal street fighting. Now, as he would be able to merge most of these fighting styles into one, as he would pretty much sign up for the entry exams during the same time Deku would have in canon. As he would have gone to the entry exams for the 10-month art training, he would just train his body, being the same body type as Deku would be after the 10-month art training, just being a lot more perfected over time since he would get this body doing, his years of training his body to become a pro hero. As he would want to become a pro hero like his grandfather and his father and his mother. So, after this, as he would see that Deku would have signed up for the entry exams, going there, and him signing up or writing down his suit as a support item. Now, as he would take or grab the suit, as he would have used a more, prototype version of his suit, not using this version of the suit, this would be his pro hero outfit, but him using a suit similar to what his grandfather would have used. Him using his suit just like in canon, the suit having the same type of, not the same set abilities as his pro hero costume or his hero costume would have had. Him just having the same suit as his grandfather making copies of his Ant-Man suit, him just wearing a copy of his Ant-Man suit, just scaled down to his body, and pretty much just wore this. As he would have gone there, people making fun of his suit a little bit, but him just going with the flow. As the suit wouldn't be as tight as this, it would be a lot more baggy, kind of like his sweatpants outfit that he would wear in the original canon of the entry exams. As he would have gone to, well, do his thing, as he would be told to go. As Deku would have passed by most of all of them, him shrinking down and punching multiple robots in the face, and pretty much crushing them, and pretty much going inside their body and pulling the wires out of their, systems and jumping out of their body. Basically using the same tactics Ant-Man used in, TV shows and also his movie, him just taking out the robots as his small version. As sometimes he would grow to Hulk size, or even just grow to Giant Man size once, but he would be soonly, met with the reality with his old suit or this old prototype suit that he made on the fly for the entry exams, that keeping his giant form suit or his giant form in his suit would be very rough on his body, as he would have been pretty sore after the first time he would go Giant Man in the entry exams. As he would keep on doing the same thing as he would do, going inside the robots, taking their wires out and destroying them from the inside. The people seeing this thinking he turned invisible or went to the robots, but seeing with the cameras that he just shrunk, saying that it's a pretty useful ability or quirk. as Deku would start to sprint around the area as fast as possible, as he would eventually come across the pretty much zero pointer. Zero pointer would have started to walk towards everybody, as Deku would just sprint off, not really going for the zero pointer since it wouldn't be any type of point, seeing that it would be useless. After he would start to run away, as he would hear Ochaku scream. As you look over and see Ochaku scream, her trying to get out the way, trying to pull her leg away. As Deku would have sprinted over there. Deku would have sprinted over there as fast as possible, him jumping in the way, and pretty much throwing a huge punch as he would have shrunk down before he got contact with the foot, pushing the foot back. As the zero pointer would have got back on his feet, it trying to crush on top of Deku and Ochaku, as Deku would use one last bit of his power or his quirk to pretty much scale up or power the suit to scale up his body to giant man size, being the same size as the zero pointer, as he would have glocked the zero pointer in the forehead, destroying the zero pointer, as he would have shrunk back down, as he would have been falling down to the ground, as Ochaku would have tried to save him by slapping him in the face before he hit the ground, floating him, as he would have gotten back up, grabbing Ochaku and pretty much running her to the recovery girl, as the alarm or the siren would have gone off, then being told to go back home and to wait for the results. We switch to 2 days later, as Deku would get the note from UA that he got in. 2 days later, he goes to UA and meets up with Ochaku in the hallways as they walk into class, them still being met with Ozawa. Now, Ozawa would still tell the class to get ready and told them to go outside for the quirk assessments. As Deku would have gone on the side for the quirk assessments, as they would all be taken down in the back, basically them being told to get ready, and pretty much Deku would be told to go first because he would have the highest score. As Bakugo would have seen this, kind of thinking that he would be a rival to him. Now, as Deku would have gotten into a stance, him grabbing the ball, him being told earlier, prior to that he couldn't use his support items, just like the belly button lizard kid. I don't remember his name, I'm sorry. For those that like him, he's a good character. I don't like him. He's not mid or anything, but as Deku would grab the ball, him pricking his finger on, what was it, a little needle he put in his pocket on his sports outfit, him grabbing the ball and catching it, letting his blood drench over the ball, and him throwing it, pretty much having the ball turn into a smaller version before he hit it off with a really big, all his strength throw, as it would have gotten pretty far because it would be the size of a bouncy ball. It going pretty far and it turning back to normal after the blood would wipe off of it due to the throw, as it would have turned back into a normal ball, it gaining more velocity a little bit, him getting probably the 4th or 5th score. 4th or 5th place. Now, not 4th or 5th place, he would get about probably 3rd or 4th place. For the long jump, Deku would have jumped over it pretty quickly since he would have pretty good, physical scowless, or physical, just without a quirk powers, because since he would train his body to be pretty athletic and, agility and, strength-wise, he would be pretty, up there. Now, for the race, Deku would have ran pretty fast, as fast as he possibly can, him being near, almost it felt like only 5% down peak physical or peak non-quirk person, or peak, just normal physical prowess. Yeah. After that, pretty much he would get, Deku would get about 3rd place, and overall Deku would get about 4th or 3rd place, doing the final, pretty much score. After that, they would be all told to go back home, as Deku would made himself back home, as he would have walked back home in the same route as Ida would be picked up, as Ida would have said goodbye to Deku, since Ida and Deku would have been friends in this canon, since they would go to the same school before UA. So after that, Deku would go back home, and that's where we're going to leave off here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Part 2 is going to be a little bit more action-packed, I'm not going to put too much emphasis in the pretty much knowledge part in part 2, but part 2 is going to be a lot more fighting and stuff like that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and as always, guys, have a blessed day.